Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome everyone to our satsang. This is Brandon Olivares, and today we'll be discussing the Tao Te Ching, chapters 19 to 21. We always start with about a minute or so, one or 2 minutes of meditation. So before we get started with the readings, I'm going to ask everyone just to relax and focus on your breathing and just center yourself for a moment or two. So I'll come back to you in a moment. Okay, welcome back everyone. Let me get our callers on the line here first of all. Hang on. Christine, are you on the line?
I'm here.
Okay. And let me get Alex on. Alex, are you on the line?
I think so.
Yep, you're on.
Hi.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, this is the first time Christine's met Alex, so Christine, that's Alex. Alex is my wife, Christine.
Hello.
Hello.
And can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Good. Okay, so, if, Christine, I know you can't do this, but you'll just hear on the reading. For anyone who's listening, if on the description for this show, I have the link to the Facebook event page, and on there I have all the chapters. Well, I have chapter 19 of the Tao Te Ching pasted. So, Alex, if you could read chapter 19, and then we'll go from there.
Alright, let me quickly switch to Facebook. I have it pulled up on my computer, but I want to make sure we have the exact one.
No problem. Christine, I guess Alex found a version of the same translation online somewhere, so that's fortunate.
Oh yeah, it's the exact
cool.
same one. Oh, that's cool. Alright, Tao Te Ching, chapter 19. Throw away holiness and wisdom, and people will be 100 times happier. Throw away morality and justice, and people will do the right thing. Throw away industry and profit, and there won't be any thieves. If these three aren't enough, just stay at the center of the circle and let all things take their course. I hope
Is
you all
that the
can
end
hear
of it?
me well.
Yeah, we heard you. Is that the end of it?
Mm-hmm.
I think it is. And I just want to mention, I know the number's listed there, but for anyone who wants to join in the discussion, it's not limited to a certain number of people, so just call the number. It's 347-857-3909. So, does anyone have, I always open up to thoughts from other people before I discuss it, so what is everyone's thoughts about that chapter?
Boy. I almost feel like, at least in the first line, throw away holiness and wisdom, and people will be 100 times happier. I almost feel like that's not trying to do something. I'm not trying to go out and gain wisdom. I'm not trying to go out and be holy.
Definitely.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way because, I grew up Catholic and, they always drill into your head, do this certain stuff to be holy. And I would do the certain stuff, and it really didn't really do much. Just, and I know for some people it does work because it's what they truly believe and things like that. And, I believe that there is a way to do it without the practices that they tell you to do. It is just a not trying that you are that way. Not having to do certain things, things like that. I don't know. That's just kind of how I feel about it.
It almost, it's like...
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
It's like forcing grace, which that
Sure.
statement in and of itself is a contradiction. You can't force grace.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can't force naturalness. You can't force holiness.
That's
So
the whole
true.
thing, and I love Osho on this point. I don't know how familiar you are with Osho, Alex, but he says, you can't force morality from the outside. You can't have commandments, thou shalt not do this and thou shalt not do that, and all you have is robots. You know what I mean? You only have robots that are, sure, they're doing what you ask them to do, but it's not really from the inside, so are they really good? You know what I mean? Are they really... Is it really helping them, or are they just being controlled?
Yeah. I mean...
No. Go ahead.
And then you can go off on the point where it's like, oh great, I lost my train of thought. Wait, hold on, I still have where it's like, oh okay, I remember now. Where it's like, okay, so you have thou shalt not kill, or you have any of these other commandments in almost any religion. Are people, then it comes up with the question, are people doing it to actually be holy, to actually be wise, or are they doing it because of whatever that religion promises, whether it be heaven, whether it be some form of enlightenment, nirvana, that kind of stuff? Are they doing it just for that? Which then, of course, they're not being holy because they're doing it for themselves, so they're not being generous because they're doing it for themselves. So it creates a whole spiral of what?
What were you going to say, Christine?
I completely agree. And there are other people that do it because they want to do it and no other reason. That they have a joy because they do it, not because they're told to, but because they just want to, and that's different. That's completely different, I think.
But then these people that do it for those reasons don't need the commandments in the first place.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. So what you said, Alex, I agree. It kind of reminds me of how a lot of people, and I know, meditation is a fine thing, but a lot of people meditate because they think that it'll help them become better people, it'll help them to achieve enlightenment. They do spiritual practices because, as you said, it's going to help them reach nirvana or enlightenment or whatever.
Yeah.
I've just been noticing so much, because I've been on Twitter a lot lately, and I've been inundated with these people, with these inspirational quotes and affirmations and focusing on love and light and all this stuff. And you come to this point where you realize, and I know Lao Tzu mentions it throughout this book also, you can't have light without dark. You can't have good without bad, or right without wrong, in quotes, because there really is no right or wrong. But they're only just two sides of the same coin, and everyone's focusing on happiness, positivity, love, all this stuff that sure has its place, but it makes everything unbalanced. It's like the yin-yang concept. You know what I mean? Like, it's so unbalanced, and then people don't know what to do when the negativity does inevitably come up. Then they think, well, what did I do wrong that I'm not still feeling this negativity?
Yeah.
It's this pervasive issue with spirituality, with the spiritual path, I feel like. I mean, it's an organized religion. You kind of expect it to be there, but even in, the alternative paths that people are following today, I think it's something the mind just does no matter what.
Yeah.
It's something I've really, really noticed.
It's like, I know, because you were saying people will get upset if, bad thoughts come up, negative thoughts come up, or something like that happens. And I know Alan once made a point, actually a few times, about people are so afraid that in the game of black and white that the dark's going to win, the black's going to win. But there is no winning or losing. They balance each other out. You need black to have white.
Yeah, and we are both the black and the white. I mean, it's not that enlightenment is all white, no black, or all light, no dark. Like, it's called enlightenment, but it's kind of a misnomer because it's not really. It's like it's the ultimate balancing of everything. You know what I mean? Everything is necessary. There's no part that's not necessary in the grand scheme of things. So it's it's just there has to be a balance. So that's just one thing I've really noticed in spirituality that's really, I think, short-sighted. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. The other day I was reading someone who said that the only thing you can control is your thoughts. And I kind of challenged him a little bit. I said, how do you know you can actually control your thoughts? It's it can seem like we can control our thoughts, but how do we really know that? So, and he said, oh yeah, we can control our thoughts, and it might seem difficult at first, but you really can. And then I kind of responded with, well, how do you really know you're controlling your thoughts, or is it just the thought, I'm controlling my thoughts, that's arising spontaneously? So it's not something people want to think about. People want to think about if I'm a strong enough person, I can have all positive, no negative. If I'm a strong enough person, I can focus my mind on this light and get rid of the dark parts of me. I don't have to face them.
Yeah,
and go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go on.
And I think also you have all these movies, shows, and a lot of New Age stuff. I have noticed that will portray this kind of realization as this white, pure light of absolute happiness and bliss.
Yep.
But in my personal experience, it's just simply, or at least a part of spiritual practice, is understanding that you need bad to have good, you need good to have bad, and to be okay in either states.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that okayness, or that emptiness, or whatever you want to call it, is really the point of it all. So when, something negative happens in my life, I'm not going to let that drag me down and blah, blah, blah. And I understand that that needs to be there. And I'm okay with that. And same with good. And not to get attached to either side.
And it makes the positive experiences feel so much better when you have the negative, because if it's all good, all joy all the time, it gets rather flat. There's no differentiation. But it's like, the best example I can think of is like when you're really, really parched, really thirsty, and then you drink a glass of water, and it tastes so good because it's the differentiation of how you felt before. Whereas if you just drink a glass of water without really feeling that thirsty, and it's good, but it's not. You know what I mean? Differentiation matters. The difference matters.
And even to go and I don't even know how to word, but that's a problem with a lot of these things, is that words never do it justice.
I know.
But it's like, even the thing to realize is, like, even the difference that makes all the difference between black and white, between parched and thirsty and being quenched, is that they're all part of the one thing. And that difference is what unifies them, really.
Mm-hmm. We have a few extra callers. If anyone who's on wants to talk, you can just press 1 and I'll put you on. But otherwise you can just listen. The thing that I've realized the most is that what we really are is beyond light and dark. You know what I mean? It's all... I had a post I wrote, I think this week, where I said, if, I don't believe in a personal God, but if some great being existed, there's no way it could just be all good. It would have to be equally good and bad.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't make sense for a great infinite being to be all good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would have to include both within it. It would have to.
Yeah.
So, it's... people just don't make sense of that. But, when the years leading up to, the awakening experiences that I've had, it was a great deal of facing, you could say demons, I guess, like facing my own issues. And I think a lot of people try to run away from that. You have to face up to what's really within you and come to terms with it before you can move beyond it. It's not just in one sense, enlightenment's a very simple thing, but in another sense, it requires total honesty with yourself.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult, I think, because it requires a lot of self-searching, a lot of facing of your own fears. It was a few really, really bad years, when all that happened. So I think a lot of people
you just have to stick through it, and just, kind of keep going.
Sure.
Well, I know that, in my experience, I do a lot of satsang, seated meditation, and at least a while ago, it used to be, and I'm going off on the honesty thing here, but it used to be that it was like, for some reason, I'd miss a night, or I would do something else instead of deciding to sit at that time. And I would always throw these excuses at myself, Like,
Sure.
oh, you don't have to do it tonight. You did it earlier, or oh, you were very mindful in the shower. It's okay. Don't worry about it. And I realized that instead of going like that, and giving myself all these excuses, I could just stop and be like, no, sit down, and that's all I needed. And not
Yep.
not even to think that, just to do it. And that's what's really helped me. And I know also I'm just doing things. The biggest thing that's helped me is actually getting up for school, because I have to get up at 5 a.m. and if my alarm's going off and I'm sitting there thinking about it, it makes it 10 times harder. But if the second I hear that alarm, I get out of bed, it's so much easier.
Sure.
And so it's good not to sit and make excuses, 5 more minutes, or, oh, I don't have to do that. And it's good to just come to terms with yourself and say, hey, do it.
Well, I'm not one that tells people that they should do a certain practice. You know what I mean? Like, I think that, like, for me, meditation was never my strong suit.
Yeah.
For me, and I'm not saying there's a right or wrong in it, but for me, it kind of, it pervaded my whole life. You know what I mean? So I'd go for a walk somewhere, and that itself would be a meditation. Or I would, whatever I was doing would become a meditation by itself. It wasn't an intentional thing. It happened. You know, so I think it requires a lot of being gentle with yourself. And I mean, if someone decides they should do it, then that's fine. But I'm not going to tell someone you can't become enlightened unless you meditate. Because there's no, there's really no requirement of nirvana or enlightenment or whatever you want to call it. Like, people have become enlightened just simply walking or just simply sitting, not doing anything in particular. You know what I mean? Or reading something, or a lot of people were extremely depressed when it happened. And so I am really skeptical when someone says, especially spiritual teachers will say, you can't get there unless you do this and this and this. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense, because it's a very spontaneous experience. One moment you could be very, very depressed, and the next moment it could all collapse. So I think, it's just whatever arises within yourself that's natural for you to do is wonderful, but no one should do it just like with the morality thing. No one should do it because someone told them to or because they think it's a good thing to do. You know, if it arises, then that's perfect. And if it doesn't arise, that's perfect. Like, there's no judgment about what should happen.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the greatest freedom, I think, from this compared to, let's say, organized religion or any other, any spiritual path, really, that has concepts and practices, is that people think they need to do things and they'll judge themselves or be judged for not complying. Like, for instance, I used to be Catholic, and, you'd get judged if you didn't go to church. You know what I mean? Or if you didn't go to confession or whatever it might be. So, again, it was externally enforced, but not really internally, it didn't really internally change anything. Christine, do you have any thoughts?
No, I mean, it's true, because you almost have to do almost nothing, or not even nothing, but just kind of let things go the way they're supposed to, and not force yourself to any practices, because honestly, it's like forcing yourself to exercise. You kind of lose the joy in it after a while, because it's like, I don't really want to do this, but I have to do this. Well, why should you have to do anything?
Sure. Yeah, I think I wanted to talk about, where it says about morality here. One second. Alex just Skyped me, and he said he'll be back in a moment. But anyway, I, talk about morality here and good and bad and justice, the idea of justice. And that's one thing I've been exploring a lot is there really an objective right or wrong. You know what I mean? It's a very hard concept because it's very ingrained in us that that there is an objective right or wrong. Especially if you come from like Western religion or even Eastern has a lot of ideas of objective right or wrong with karma and things like that. But like it says here, it says throw away morality and justice, and people will do the right thing. And one of the things that came to mind, again with Osho, he said, I'm not going to give a system of morality. All I can say is whatever an enlightened master does is right, and whatever he doesn't do is wrong. But it's only for him. It's not. It doesn't mean that you should emulate that. It just means that that's how it is for that person. You know what I mean? So whatever he does is right, whatever he doesn't do is wrong. So I think it's really important. Just again, even with the practices, it's the same idea, is that you can't have an externally enforced system. Oh, I remember what I was going to say to your response, Christine. I was thinking about Jeff Foster, and he said, we were talking about practices, and he said, basically what I'm saying is that no practice can really get you there. But he said he's not going to tell someone not to do a practice, because then the mind will have the practice of not practicing.
Right.
So you could have, for instance, you could have the practice of meditating, or you could have the practice of not meditating, and say, well, because it's not going to get me anywhere, so now I'm going to have the practice of not practicing. And it's just the same trick of ego that, mind says, well, I'm going to be good by not practicing. Or,
Right.
So it's not that it should be done or shouldn't be done. It's just that whatever arises is perfect. You know what I mean? So,
Exactly. And if you want to do something, you do it, and it's fine. Just because you love doing it. Like, there were gurus that loved doing kirtan. They didn't have to do kirtan. They were enlightened, which is, for those who don't know, a form of devotional yoga, singing and stuff. But they did it just to do it. Why not?
I love kirtan.
You haven't listened to it in a long time.
Well, it's on my playlist, but we haven't really done it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something, it's really hard because anything you say to someone, they're going to make a rule or a concept or an idea out of it. So it's very hard. So if you say, practice this, then they'll say, oh, I have to practice this or else I can't be enlightened. Where if you say, don't practice this, they'll say, well, so I can't practice this. They'll make a rule out of it. It's what the mind does. Instead of just relaxing and surrendering into it, and even if you say surrender into who you already are, even that becomes, I remember someone asked me, well, I don't know how to surrender. And it's not a how-to or a doing or something you need to do. It's just what happened. You know what I mean? It's just stop trying so hard.
I always tell you that.
I know. So it's just so hard to really get across, how this works because I guess it's so counterintuitive because the ego's purpose is to get us to be happy, but it thinks that to be happy we have to fight everything that might threaten that happiness. And of course, in reality, nothing can really threaten it unless we allow it to. Do you have any other thoughts, Christine?
No, I mean, I think it's really good. I mean, I agree.
The last, I don't know if you tell us when you're back with us, Alex. The last paragraph of this chapter, it says, if these three aren't enough, just stay at the center of the circle and let all things take their course. What do you think that means, Christine?
Can you read it again?
Sure. If these three aren't enough, so the three were the three sentences before about throwing away holiness and wisdom, morality, and things like that. If these three aren't enough, just stay at the center of the circle and let all things take their course.
I think
So what do you
it's the
think?
same.
Go ahead.
I think it's the same thing that everyone else, that the whole line is trying to say, just said in a different way. That you just let things happen the way they're supposed to, and you just kind of go with the flow of everything, and that itself is really surrendering, letting things go, letting things happen, not
Mm-hmm.
trying to do one thing or the other, but just doing what you feel you're supposed to do at that time.
Sure. What do you think the center of the circle means?
Probably just maybe just staying at the center, staying just outside of everything, really. Like you're watching the movie screen.
I'm
Just
back.
saying hi.
Hey, did you hear what we were saying, Alex?
Yep, I've been here the whole time.
All right, cool. Go on, Christine, finish your thought.
No, just that you have to stay at the center, not letting situations bother you, just, that silence that you always talk about.
Sure. So the question was about this last paragraph of the chapter, Alex. What do you think that means?
Um, when I see the just stay at the center of the circle part and let all things take their course, the first thing I think of is an actual physical circle. And I guess the first thing that really comes to mind is that it's like stay centered with yourself and just let all these other things about, a line to follow for holiness and wisdom, certain ideas of morality and justice, all these things just go around you and stay right at the center of them all where they aren't. So a line or a circle has a consistent line all the way around. So it's
Sure.
almost like remove yourself from that line, from following the holiness and wisdom, and even not following holiness and wisdom, and just be at the center.
Sure. It reminds me of, I wish I remember who it was that said this. I was reading about someone who said, basically, enlightenment is like the path to it is like you're standing on a wheel. And at first, most of your weight, like you have one foot on the rim of the wheel and one foot in the center of the wheel. And in the beginning, most of your weight's on the rim, so you're being tossed around by life going in circles every which way. And as you start to realize yourself and who you really are, you put more and more weight on the center where it doesn't move. The center of the wheel doesn't move. And so that you do that more and more until eventually the balance tips and you have most of your weight on the center and only a little bit on the rim. You know what I mean? So it's kind of centering more and more into this place of stillness. And I always talk about silence, as Christine said, and not getting caught up in the waves of life, of perception, of sense experience. So that's what it really reminds me of, is staying in the center of this wheel. And you could say, like, if you use the ocean analogy, if you go deep enough in the ocean, there's not much of a current. There's no waves deep in the ocean. So if you stay on the surface, you're going to get tossed about by the waves. But if you go deep, then you can't really get touched by them.
Yeah, I agree.
So it really reminds me of that. But yeah, I think that, throwing away these ideas, like I said, it seems like such a radical thing, like throwing away the idea of morality, for instance. Seems like such a radical thing that, people think we shouldn't do. But if you're centered in yourself, people think, well, if I don't judge myself for what I do, then I'm just going to do everything wrong. But if you're centered in yourself, why would you have the need to do anything that might deprive someone else or hurt someone else, or even yourself?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So not that you don't judge these things as wrong, but why would you do them? These certain actions only come out of a place of suffering, a place of identification. If you don't identify them, why would you do them?
Yeah.
So it seems very, very dangerous, but it's really not, because when you're really centered, then why would you do any of that?
I really, really like the line, throw away morality and justice, just for the fact that both those things are both perspective
Sure.
both vary on people's perspective and are also, in the sense that he's talking about them, are also created by man and by the mind.
Oh, it all is, yeah.
And so, I mean, you have this idea of morality, and morality changes from person to person, from religion to religion,
Sure.
et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, you kind of take your own morality as your own. But when you come to your own center, I mean, you were just saying that, why would you do that to someone else? Well, that's true morality right there.
Yeah.
I mean, I know
It really is.
Laozi has said a few times something along the lines of, like, morality without no morality without morality is true morality. Something along those lines. When you don't have
Sure.
this preconceived idea of what your morals are or what justice should be, and you just kind of, you know, go with your centered self, then true morality comes out.
And really, morality is the story of a past. I mean, you can't judge an action as right or wrong until the action's in the past. You can't judge what's currently happening because you haven't even absorbed it yet. You haven't interpreted yet in your mind. So morality is always a story of the past, and if you're staying in the present moment, morality doesn't make sense. Why
Yeah.
would you judge something that happened even 3 seconds ago? Why would you judge it? It's already passed. You know what I mean? So that's everything that happens that you have a judgment on is a judgment of past, not present.
Yeah.
It
And
really makes no sense.
you can even go and, I mean, you just sparked a thought in my head about morality is, it is a judging term.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're differentiating between good and bad,
Sure.
and what's moral, what's immoral, and, you know, what should I do in this situation. And you were talking about the past. You could even almost say that it also has to do with looking too far ahead in the future,
Mm-hmm.
because you could say, I'm saving this, I don't know, rabbit on the side of the road, and I'm doing a good moral thing because I saved a life. Well,
Sure.
cause and effect, cause and conditions arise, and by you saving that rabbit, unintentionally so-and-so died. I don't know how that would string together, but it's a possibility. And
Sure.
so, you know, the concept of morality and judging these things and looking to the past to judge it, or looking to the future for hopefully a good outcome, is both not in the present, put it that way.
No, not at all. When you live moment by moment, there's no judgment of what's going on. I always like to say there's no suffering when you don't interpret the world around you. When you let each moment come as it is, free of interpretation, everything's perfect. You know what I mean? Everything is absolutely perfect. Even if there's discomfort involved, it's still perfect because you can't judge it until it's already passed.
Exactly.
You know?
I mean, the
So,
world really is absolutely perfect. Even
oh, it is.
all the bad things that happen, this is again where words come and stop me dead
I
in
know.
my tracks.
Yeah.
But it's like, it is perfect in a sense because that's what's happening. Whether
That's what's
it's
happening.
morally good or morally bad doesn't matter. That is what is happening right now.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's in its complete perfectness.
Exactly. And when you throw around this word should, where does should exist? You know, let's say, I don't know what a good example is. You know, let's say someone gets in an accident, and they say that shouldn't have happened. Where is this shouldn't that, you know, they think, oh, this shouldn't have happened. The reality is what it is. Reality can't be different because it's already passed by the time you think about it.
Yeah.
So where is this magical realm of what should or shouldn't be, and according to whom? The question I always ask people is, according to whose authority are you basing that? You know, and people, this is the whole religion thing. A lot of people might say God, and I'll ask, how do you know that? Well, the Bible says, or the Vedas say, or whatever book or whatever teachers or whatever, they say so. Well, how do they know what God says? Did he come down and speak, this is right and wrong, and you know what I mean? So when you really think about it, you can only put on your own authority, and what good is that? I mean, who are you to say what shouldn't happen?
Yeah.
Really,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like, who are you to say that shouldn't have happened?
And I mean, should is really just, like you were saying, where does that exist?
Yeah?
You really can't find should anywhere else. What's
No?
happening is happening, period. And should is just a concept of the mind, and you're trying to work with this and think, oh, there was a better alternative. It didn't happen. So I could
Sure.
even go as far as and say that should actually can cause some more suffering in the situation, because then
Oh,
you're
I know it does.
Oh,
resisting
yeah.
the present. You're
Yep.
resisting what's going on right then.
Exactly. One of my favorite lines by Byron Katie is, I'm paraphrasing, but she says, even if a person only lives to take one breath, they've lived a full life. Because how can you judge how long, we say if a person dies when they're relatively young, we say, oh, they died too soon.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And she says, even if a person only lives to breathe one breath, they've lived a full life. They've lived as long as they were supposed to live.
And then you can take and look at, actually a friend and I were curious the other day about how come some animals live longer than others, and we found that there's theories and stuff about heartbeat speed
Yeah,
and
I heard
whatnot.
that. Sure.
And you can take that and put that into account with the same thing that you just said. How can you really judge on how long a life should be, or
Yeah?
if someone died too soon, or if something died too soon, when you have all these different beings that are coming and going at different times, at different rates, at different speeds, and that's
Mhm.
perfect just how it is. I mean, however long a fly lives is exactly,
Yep.
and I almost just caught myself by saying how long it should live, but
Yeah.
even within that,
Yeah.
so it's very
Well,
interesting and situational.
It is. But,
and then you get the people that are like, oh, you'll live longer if you eat healthier, if you stop smoking, blah, 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 My fifth grade teacher just passed away this week, and he had lung cancer, and he was a smoker. But there are non-smokers that get lung cancer too.
Yeah,
So I mean, so who's to say that smoking actually causes lung cancer, or
hmm
having 10 cups of coffee is bad for you, or eating lots of chocolate is bad for you? I mean, the way I see it is when you go, no matter how healthy you eat. Because I know people that were, you know, very healthy and fit as a fiddle, and they died.
yeah.
Yeah. It happens.
So I don't know if it really, we have all these doctors that are like, oh, you should do this to stay healthy and that to stay healthy, but I don't know. I mean, is that really true?
hmm
Or is science just being funny?
It depends on the
Is
person, what
science,
they want to do.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, what I don't get is when someone purposely suffers because they have this idea of what they can and can't do, in order to prolong their life, but they're suffering the whole time, so is it worth it? I mean, whatever their choice is their choice, but it just, sometimes it doesn't make sense.
And that goes with the whole diet thing too. And
Yeah.
like,
Exactly.
for example, I'm vegan, and I get asked a lot, "Oh, are you doing it to be healthier? Are you doing it to stay long or to live longer?" And my response, which always puts people back a little bit, is actually a quote from the movie Platoon, which is, "We all gotta die sometime," and I leave it at that most of the time. And the real reason for me doing it has to do with animals and their well-being, but that's besides the point. It's just that I've seen so many people go through these diet things where they suffer day in and day out, and they see their friends eating a certain kind of food, and they go on Facebook and write, "Oh, I wish I could eat this," or "I wish I could do this," or "I should have done this," and it's like, why suffer for these false morals, these false concepts, all this stuff that you don't need to
Sure.
suffer for?
Yeah, exactly.
Ugh. Brandon was vegan for about a month, and I'm not picking on you, Alex, but for me it was hell.
For my mom, it is too.
I'm sure. It's tough. It is really, really tough.
Give you a lot of credit for doing it. I've tried some of the vegan stuff, and some of it's okay, but some of it is, I don't know. The way I see it is everyone, and I know that a lot of animals are mistreated, and that's one thing, but
Yeah.
what I see is, well, and I'm speaking dually, obviously, but if there are animals, then we should be eating them. I mean, and from a Christian perspective, God gave us animals to eat, so let's enjoy, But obviously I understand the whole treating them right and everything.
Well, you could even go off that with the whole moral thing, and I was actually having this conversation in the Skype Sangha the other day, is why do humans feel like it's cool to eat cows, pigs, chickens, etc., but then when dogs or cats are brought to the table, everybody flips out, and it's this whole morality thing. And it's,
you have a point.
Once again, it's very, very interesting and very, very sticky to get into.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Well, one thing, I think Liam's going to join us.
Yay, Liam.
But anyway, I know. I told him to take a break. But anyway, and animals don't have morality. I mean, if you tell a lion he should be, vegetarian, or he shouldn't kill other animals, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Animals don't have morality or an idea of what they should or shouldn't do. It's just how they live.
Yeah.
Or you have the animals that might eat their children for a certain reason, or to eat their mates, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and we look at that as barbaric, but to the animals in question, it's how they were, I don't want to say created, but it's how they evolved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's how they live. There's no morality in it.
And like, my example, for some reason when you brought up eating babies is what I thought of. But when I was younger, I had a hamster, and this hamster we were told was male, and we had another male hamster. It turned out she was female.
Oh!
And they ended up mating and having like 16 babies, and she ate 10 of them. And I remember my mother flipping out about this, and I'm like, at the time I was very young, so I didn't have this kind of understanding that I believe I have now. Yeah. But now looking back, it's like, that's what they do. If the babies don't seem like they're going to survive, if they're runts, if the mother feels like she needs to be, or to have more food, or for whatever reason it's done, or maybe even no reason at all, it's done, and that's what happens.
That's what they do. And we can't apply human morality to animals. You know what I mean? It's like people who will punish like a dog or a cat for doing something that's within their nature.
Yeah.
And, you should know better not to do that. Well, no, that's their nature.
It's true.
It's their I mean, you can train them, but to yell at them and punish them for doing what they're supposed to do is a totally ridiculous thing. I mean, I don't understand it.
Yeah, I have, actually, I should say had 2 dogs at my old house where I was living before, and there was one incident I had a friend over, and I had a dog named Noah, and he was just barking like crazy at something outside. And I remember my friend going, "Shh, be quiet, stop being so loud, etc., etc. You should tell him to be quiet." And I'm like, maybe you should stop talking too then.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Well, I mean, you can train them, but to yell at them, it doesn't make sense. I mean, they don't know what our subjective ideas of right and wrong is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How would they know? So it's just, I don't know. Are there any final thoughts on this chapter before we move on to the next?
Ow, kitty.
Speaking of animals,
I think there's a 954 area code. I don't know if that's you, Liam. Press 1 if you want to get in the queue, and we'll put you on. So are there any final thoughts on this?
Yeah, my only comment is that I really, really enjoy the line, if these 3 aren't enough, just stay at the center of the circle and let all things take their course. It's very beautifully written.
I love the idea of Wu Wei, of non-doing.
Yeah.
That's one thing I like about Taoism over, like, Buddhism or Hinduism or whatever. Like, they emphasize this non-doing. They emphasize surrender and not acting unless it's necessary. And Christina, you don't know here because I can hear myself. She's coming out here. Anyway, So in Buddhism and Hinduism, they advocate, spiritual practices or techniques or things that you can do to get there. And honestly, I think like if the people who come up with these are really enlightened, then they're only doing it to distract the ego until the person really realizes the practice was ridiculous to begin with.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
that's why
954, if that's Liam, I'm going to put you on right now. And you should be on.
All right. On here?
Hi.
Yep, you're here.
hello.
Yo, what's up?
Woo-hoo. All right. Anyway, go on, Alex.
All right, this is a pretty interesting conversation.
Yeah?
The only thing I was gonna say before, because you were talking about Taoism stuff, and that's why I've taken such a liking to Zen, is that it really seems like to me a mix of Taoism and then traditional Indian Mahayana Buddhism. So you have that non-trying part, and then I don't necessarily want to say the trying part, but you have the practice part of it. So you have the natural flow, but you also have some sort of discipline, or I don't want to say rigid, but I don't know. That's just my take on it.
Sure. And one thing I like about Zen, you hear the stories about, the student asks a question of a master, and the master slaps the student. Like, stop thinking about these worthless things and just get back to the present.
Yep.
It's kind of a jolt, like, what are you doing?
Please don't smack me, Brandon.
It's just a funny thing, I think, But that's one thing I like about Zen, is that it's very abrupt sometimes.
Yeah.
It doesn't pull punches.
Well, you brought up Mu earlier, because I sent you the Muman Khan, or however you pronounce it, and I think I showed Liam this video. I saw a video of the actual interview where you recite the koan that you've been given, and then you somehow try to answer it, and this guy had the Mu one about, does a dog have Buddha nature? And he replies by simply screaming moo at the top of his lungs into his teacher's face, which I thought was very interesting and funny.
So, okay, Kramer, you're on. You just asked me how you get on. Press 1, and you'll be able to talk. Well, I'll have to put you on live, but I don't know you want to talk. So press 1 first. Okay. That is really funny. Yeah, I didn't get the whole moo thing. That was really, like, if you meditate on it, if you say it, and, like, one word can't really, get you to that point, but I guess it's just the focus. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to laugh every time you say that. Ooh. I don't know.
But, yeah, I don't know, but, as far as, I didn't read the whole thing, but about, like, whether, I don't know what the answer was, but whether a dog has Buddha nature. I think, and I know you can't really answer these things, but for me, like, it's not that something has Buddha nature, it's more that Buddha nature has us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Buddha
I
nature...
just feel like the Buddha nature, it's kind of an intrinsic part of I guess existence in itself. That's the whole point of the koan, is that there's, when you ask that question, it's kind of imposing some kind of duality on the whole idea. So to answer in that way that he did, in the video like that you showed me, it's kind of acknowledging the fact that there's no right side to it, I guess.
Yeah.
It's true. Okay, I think we're ready for the next chapter unless there are any other thoughts.
No.
So, Alex, do you want to read chapter 20?
Yep. I'm just going to read it off the website I have because I'm almost positive it's the exact same one.
That's fine.
So,
I think it is.
20. Stop thinking and end your problems. What difference between yes and no? What difference between success and failure? Must you value what others value? Avoid what others avoid? How ridiculous. Other people are excited, as though they were at a parade. I alone don't care. I alone am expressionless, like an infant before it can smile. Other people have what they need. I alone possess nothing. I alone drift about, like someone without a home. I am like an idiot, My mind is so empty. Other people are bright. I alone am dark. Other people are sharper. I alone am dull. Other people have a purpose. I alone don't know. I drift like a wave on the ocean. I blow as aimless as the wind. I am different from ordinary people. I drink from the great mother's breasts. Good ending, Laozi.
I know. Here. Kramer, can you speak?
Man, that dial pad one thing threw me off so hard. Thank you for
I
telling me
know.
that.
Yeah, I figured you weren't doing that. It's a really tough, it's a really tricky thing.
Oh, wow.
All right. Great ending. That was awesome. Anyway, any thoughts?
Yeah, Brandon, really. No, just kidding.
Yeah, I didn't change the chapter. I didn't write it. Anyway, what are your thoughts on this one?
Wait, so what verse or chapter was that?
20.
Chapter 20. It's on the
20?
Facebook event page. If you click the link on Blog Talk Radio.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts on this one?
I guess I'm just going to keep going line, well, not necessarily line for line, but like chunk per chunk, paragraph for paragraph there. It's better.
Yeah, that's what we do.
And the first one, first thing that caught my eye after reading through is what difference between yes and no? What difference between success and failure? And here we, just like we were talking about in the last one, we come again to the duality and non-duality of things. How you can't have yes without no. You can't have success without failure. They're all part of the same thing.
Well, I mean, success and failure are only determined in the present moment because, obviously one thing that could be successful and, in the present moment could be down the road, could be something that is really detrimental to something else you're doing.
Yeah.
Well, what it
So
really
that
means
really
is
is no
failure.
different.
Failure is just a judgment you have on something. Is there really such thing as failure?
Right.
That's true.
And then again goes what you were saying before about how, whatever, I think we were on morality before, how the only way you can judge that is in the past.
Yeah?
And so then again, you're not in the present anymore.
No such
And then
thing as failure in the present.
and as Liam was saying, it's like the success of right now or success of today could also turn out to be complete failure tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And so it all just matters right here, right now.
Yeah, when I think of this idea, I like to think of like in Stoicism they have the idea of logos, which is just in a way fate, but you can kind of connect the idea of fate to Tao being the idea that I guess in the naturalistic sense, whatever happens is meant to happen. When people say that, it's really cliche, but in my opinion, that just means that whatever happens, happens, and there's no really right or wrong to it, or there's no difference between whatever possibilities happen.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain that, but it's really interesting.
Well, I think a good point to mention, earlier, I believe it was in 19, you guys were discussing about how, like, Brandon was explaining about if there was a God, or just reality in general, however it encompasses things. If it exists in this way, what's to dictate this label of rightness or wrongness?
Yeah.
If it's there for a reason. And
Right.
there really is, like, no reason as to, there's no reason as to why it's acceptable and not acceptable to do this and that and hoopla. It's silly.
Exactly. And it's just really applying this, I don't even want to say human, but it's applying an ego, I don't even know how to word it, an egoistic value on things.
Yeah.
And
It reminds me... Go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was done. I was just going
It
off.
reminds me of the line that says, must you value what others value, avoid what others avoid. I was reflecting back, this was a few weeks ago, but, I don't know how many of you know this. I dropped out of college. I went to college for 5 years and dropped out.
You only just met me.
Yeah, I wanted to be Christine, basically. But, and a lot of people, like, Christine's family see that it's a failure. They think I should go back to college. They think I should pursue further education. So if you really look at my life in the perspective of a lot of people in the world, what a lot of people value, it looks a lot like a failure. You know what I mean? But to me, it's really not. I'm perfectly happy. I'm at peace. I mean, we have everything we need. Like, it's not a failure to me.
That's a really good point. But
Yeah.
I also don't, it should be looked at it from like a nihilistic perspective, like, nothing's right or nothing's wrong, so ultimately I don't really have any responsibility. But I think it's more saying that, take control of things, but at the same time, drop the expectations of this being right or this being wrong, and just do it.
Is that Liam speaking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Just as a kind of devil's advocate question, what's the difference between your first statement and your second?
What? Sorry.
Between, you said not to be nihilistic,
Yeah.
nothing's right and nothing's wrong, so I have no responsibility, and your second statement.
Well, I didn't know that I had two statements, but
Well,
basically,
don't do this, but do this.
No, I said that just because you're kind of looking at it from the perspective of you dropped out of school and everything, and people may have that judgment of it being wrong, but at the same time, it doesn't really give. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't give anybody the right to drop responsibilities or to drop the idea of wanting what they perceive as success, but to go into things with expectation of success.
I see what you mean.
I kind of do, but I think it's fear-based still, because there's perhaps the fear that, if I drop responsibility, then I'm going to just waste away my life, and I'll do everything, I'll be a failure. You know what I mean? Like, it seems fear-based.
It could be completely liberating, in my opinion, the idea of just going to things without the expectation of a particular, right or wrong, and kind of just accepting what comes to you.
Well, here's the thought that I have.
This is the idea of Wu Wei also, is that, it doesn't mean to give up action. It doesn't mean to give up being or anything. In that sense, if it was, then why not just, end your existence in the first place? It's kind of just flowing with whatever, what's the natural life.
I don't think there is responsibility, because for there to be responsibility, there would have to be a person. So, so I'm trying to reconcile the two different points of view. You're saying...
Well, you can't argue that ego doesn't exist, because it does.
Well, actually, it doesn't, in reality, ego is just a collection of thoughts. So in reality,
Right.
It doesn't really truly exist. It's just thoughts.
And a brand new baby isn't necessarily born with an ego.
Yeah,
it's until we start applying, the social conventions and these ideas.
It just seems cohesive because we have this idea of an I, and we have this idea of right and wrong and beliefs. There really is no ego. There never was an ego. It's just...
I think it really depends on how you define the idea of ego, and a technical side would be, more of the psychology idea of, ego being just the behavioral pattern, and from a more Buddhist perspective, it's more of the thought patterns, if that makes any sense. Behavior is something tangible. Behavior is something that can be observed. Thoughts can't necessarily be observed.
Okay,
so in that
here's
sense,
one thought that I have, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to get this out. What is anyone truly responsible for? I mean, honestly.
Exactly.
No, I'm just trying to get this out of nihilism, because this is what it's becoming, and in a sense, Buddhism is it is an Eastern nihilism in a certain sense, but I was just trying to pull it out of that perspective.
So my question would be, if you want to identify it as nihilism, whatever you want to identify it as, what is your fear of what will happen if you denounce responsibility? I'm not saying you're right
Right.
or wrong. It's just my question of it. Let's explore your thinking to see what's really this very fearful outcome might be.
What? I didn't hear the last part, but I heard something about fear.
I was saying, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but let's explore what, the seemingly fearful outcome might be according to what you're saying. So what do you think, why do you think we shouldn't denounce responsibility? What is the fearful aspect going on here?
I didn't say responsibility is an incorrect word because that is kind of implying some obligation to actually care about things which you really don't have. But I think when it comes to practicing the idea of Wu Wei or what we just read about the Tao Te Ching, there is a responsibility, and that responsibility, Buddhist monks would completely agree, waking up to a structured day so they can get their practices in. That is the kind of idea of responsibility, but to go about it without an attachment, without an expectation, if that makes any sense. It's not the same responsibility that a professor would have at a university. It's not like that. It's not the same type of responsibility. It's less attachment oriented.
I guess it's also like, if I may chime in, it's also like, it's not necessarily, at least from what I think you're saying, is that it's not necessarily that not having responsibility is a bad thing, or is that it's something to fear, but having responsibility is completely fine within this, Wu Wei situation.
Yeah, I don't think it's right to demonize responsibility or people who have responsibility, because those are completely natural things.
Well, no one's demonizing it. I'm just saying, what would happen in your view if it wasn't there? I'm not saying it should or shouldn't be there.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Like, it's hard to say. It's hard to speak because people will add shoulds where there aren't shoulds. And people will say, I'm judging responsibility, or I'm judging one thing or another.
No, I'm not saying it should be one way or it should be. I'm not saying that there's any right way to go about this whole discussion or whatever. But so basically, what you're asking is if responsibility was completely dropped in the human population, what would happen?
But that's a what if. That's a what if, which isn't present. You know what I mean? That's not really what's going on right now.
Right.
So, in my view, if let's say everyone were enlightened, and everyone dropped the idea of I should do this, which is really what responsibility is. I should do this, right? Because I need to be responsible. If everyone dropped the idea and just lived according to what arose within that, I think it would be perfect. Because there wouldn't be a belief saying I should do this or I shouldn't do that. It would just be perfect flowing with life.
I see what you're saying.
I see what you're saying for sure.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying you, we have this tendency, let's take two different people. Person number one, and I'm not saying either is right or wrong, but we have this tendency. Person number one maybe dropped out of high school or finished with a GED or something, lives off of welfare, the type of person I'm talking about. Person number two works their way through college, maybe gets a master's, maybe a doctorate, they have a well-paying job, they have a nice family, nice house. Person number one, we tend to judge as wrong, as lazy, as irresponsible, as leeching off of society, let's say. And so we say that person is wrong for doing that because they don't have responsibility. Person number two, we might say, well, they have great responsibility. They paid back to society and they're working and they're paying taxes. And so what I'm saying, I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. What I'm saying is let's drop the judgment altogether. And if because what happened for me is when I was in college, I had this idea that it was the right thing to do to be in college, even though every part of me was resisting it.
You need to get a 4.0.
Well, yes, for a while. But I grew up with this idea, I'm a great student, I get good grades, I'm, academically proficient, whatever. And once when you approach enlightenment, all your identities will crumble. So I had this identity of good student. And so when that started to crumble by, getting C's and sometimes worse, and not wanting to do my work and just altogether resisting what was going on, I was kind of forced to take a look at it. Is it really true I'm a bad person if I don't finish college? And when I realized, and this wasn't even in a spiritual context at the time, it was just what's really good for me. So when I realized, okay, everyone's telling me I should finish. Everyone's telling me this is what a responsible person does. But for my own sanity, for my own, how life expressed itself through me, it was obvious that that wasn't for me. And so
Yeah, I understand. I don't mean to cut you off, but I understand that point of view, and that's what I'm trying to also say is responsibility is a very personal thing, and it's not something defined by other people. So if you felt like that was the right decision, that's completely the right decision. There's no, and that goes back to this point of view. There's no what difference between success and failure is. Fundamentally, there's no difference, but I think as a human being, you have a right to distinguish between the two.
Mm-hmm.
If I may talk about the college thing, I mean, I could say that I'm also at a similar standpoint, if I could put that in quotations, where I'm a senior in high school, and I think it's every week or 2 weeks, we have a period of time during the day where we have to go in with our counselors as a group and discuss college, get all our transcripts ready, all this stuff. And I remember there was a point in one of these little sessions where I'm like, what if we don't want to go to college?
Exactly.
And half the teachers looked at me like I was some kind of demon out of hell or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I also think I was asked, okay, well, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to travel. And obviously, saying that in that kind of setting, people are like, oh, what the hell's wrong with you? But it's different viewpoints, and going off what Liam said, it's different ideas of, I don't want to say success and failure, but different ideas of what you feel like you should do, what you feel like you have to do. Sure. And for me, it's like, I can even say it's a desire that keeps arising in me, is that I really do want to travel. And you know what? I don't feel like college life is the life for me. And people are going to judge and say, oh, then you're a failure. But that's by society's
I think it's cool.
Yeah, I think it's awesome.
I do. I think you should definitely do it.
But it's coming off of someone's own personal view of what success is, what failure is. And that's why it's a perspective thing. And I think that also adds the point that, well, then there really isn't any success or failure. Everybody's got this own different idea of it. Also, someone sounds like they're in the middle of a windstorm.
Oh, yeah, that's me. I turned off my mute button because this is like, okay, now I'm ready to talk. But no, so yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. The idea that you are portraying in explaining about ideas when it comes to success and failure, that has to do with particularly Western society, what is expected of the individual. To make this whole machine run, everyone expects, look, you need to go and accomplish this. You go and accomplish this, things work out well, and you'll be happy. This is, again, a societal view in which helps perpetuate, that's the word, the agenda of a capitalist, consumerist group. And in order for that system to stay alive, they have to keep the idea alive, and they have to enforce it through means of guilt, coercion, just general enforcements of any kind that they feel is appropriate. And the moment that anytime any view, whether it has to do with failure or success, right and wrong, hoopla, anytime that is questioned or even outright opposed, people in that egoic state tend to really repulse with the idea and try and fix it. So, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with you. The idea that you want to go and not attend college and that you would rather see what's around you, I commend you for it. Because, I mean, honestly, at the fact that the idea of you sitting around in a cubicle and a classroom for 4 years doesn't sound appealing, and you want to learn with what is around you and you want to experience all that there is around you, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
should
Yeah,
do
I
whatever
agree.
you feel like
Yep.
you should do what you like.
Thank
And
you.
it's really,
And
it's go ahead, Christine.
No, just that, sometimes I think the classroom stifles you. I mean, I graduated with a degree in mental health, okay? It taught me zilch. Didn't teach me a thing. I mean, maybe I learned a little bit here and there, but I work at the Mental Health Association. I'm learning more there than I ever did in college, and I'm like, it was a waste of my time, and I'm
Yeah.
not saying people should or shouldn't go to college. That's not me to judge. But I believe experience is the best teacher. I don't believe sitting in a classroom.
I agree.
And
I
I do massage therapy, and and I'm not trying to brag or anything, but I'm not certified, but people that have gotten really hurt come to me, and usually I can fix almost anything. And I'm not saying that to brag, but, the only reason, I don't even know, you have to go get certified in order to practice here in New York State. And it's like, why do I have to go through school when
Yeah.
I'm being mentored by someone that's teaching me how to do it? And it's just stupid.
Yeah.
And I have to go to school because I don't have a choice to go to school. But I don't learn that way. I mean, I do learn in the classroom, but I'd rather just have someone teach me. It's just one of those things. So the traveling, I think, is the best way for you to learn, and you'll gain a lot of wisdom fast from it.
Thank you.
I also see the classroom as being 70% learning jargon and 25% actually gaining information that is going to help with whatever you're doing. Really, it's what you're learning. You're learning language and how to fit these languages into the appropriate field.
Well,
I feel like it's like... Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
I feel like it's also... For example, I love learning. I love being interested in something and going and researching it, and my go-to website is Wikipedia. I'm on that more than anything. And I love that place. But when you go to school, and I'm actually a little concerned about, because I'm taking a philosophy class next year, technically this year, I'm concerned that it's going to take the fun out of learning philosophy, because all these other classes take learning and they make it this, you have to do this.
It does, yeah.
It's very structured in the wrong way, I guess, at least in my opinion.
When I first went to college, I was a computer science major, and I have been programming since I was 12 years old. And I was completely self-taught. I learned a ton of languages. When I went to college, I was so incredibly bored because these people were learning things that I had already learned 8 years before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I kind of made it a challenge. I would go above and beyond with these programs and add features, and just because I could do the programs overnight, and then it was just, what else am I going to do? But the way I learn is self-taught. And with the internet today, I really think, I mean, it's kind of off topic, but education, I think, would be benefited by moving towards more self-engaged learning.
Yeah.
Because there's so much information out there today that you can learn a semester's worth of information in about a week.
Yeah.
Sure.
Instead of having to go through the slow method.
It will also, though, my only comment on that is that, for example, my school right now, last year they just decided, okay, we're going to give kids iPads. Everybody in the school gets an iPad. I'm actually on it right now. And you use that for your learning. And a lot of the classes switch to where it's, here's the assignment, here's the place where you can learn about it, go do it. And then we'll go off on our own time, or sometimes in class, and go through and learn this stuff. Problem comes with that, or at least in my experience, is when either the student is defiant to learning and would rather, go talk to the girl in the hallway or whatever, or they don't find that interesting. For example, math. I'm really not a fan of it.
Me neither.
And
It's okay.
I am my freshman year, Algebra 1, had math, but it was that structure of a class. Go off and learn it on your own, do it on your own, and then come back here and take the test. I failed that class because of that reason, because I personally could not handle that responsibility. Now, if you would do that with art history, if you would do that with Japanese history, anything like that, I would learn that in a heartbeat. I would be asking you to do extra projects and stuff, because that's what interests me. And so I think you got to kind of balance okay, here, learn this by yourself. You can learn it better this way faster, and let me help you and guide you in teaching this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what teachers need to be able to do more now, because I feel like we are straying away from that too much. I don't know. It's an opinion.
Real quick, we have another caller. I'm going to put you live now. It's Chocolate Truffle 2.
Yeah, I
love
made that
it.
in grade 7.
Love it.
Hi, what's your name?
Elisa.
Oh, hi, Lisa. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Oh, good. So you can join in the discussion anytime. We're doing the Tao Te Ching. We kind of got off topic with education.
Kind of.
Yeah, we're really far out in this conversation.
Yeah, a little bit. So just jump in anytime you like.
Okay.
But anyway, my point, getting back to the whole responsibility thing, is, I think responsibility it sounds like a really good word. I think it has an implied should involved in it, like I was saying before. And it has this implied, this is what I should do. And like Liam, you were saying earlier about the Buddhist monks who do the practices, and I think, it's good for them, I'm sure they chose to do that, and it's what they want to do. But I think there's no practice that can get to enlightenment. It's just, I never liked to meditate. I remember when I was 13, I used to try to meditate for like 4 hours. And I would go in the room, I'd sit down, and 2 hours later I'd be waking up. Yeah, I would be sleeping, and I was never good at meditation. And I would try, and I would feel, I'm never going to get there if I can't meditate. But it's this myth that people propagate that if you don't practice, you don't get there. And I do think, there's always going to be a seeker component to the mind until you realize there can be no seeking. But until that happens, until the collapse of ego happens, there is always a seeking component. So in a sense, you need to do something, even if it's just spiritual reading, because your mind's going to try to seek anyway. But
yeah.
Well, I'd like to also add the spiritual practice part into it, is that I think this goes back to the idea of responsibility. I hate to go back to that point, but you have a responsibility as a human being to also culminate the growing process and culminate you growing as a human being and as a person. And I think the one thing that culminates that the most is fear, or more importantly, I guess in a way, stress, or not liking something that you're doing, like Alex said about math. It's hard for you to do it on your own and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's a completely liberating. It sounds like somebody's opening a fucking brainstorm or something.
Mm-hmm.
Are we truly obliged to do anything, though?
No, that's the thing. Growth is another one of those words. Growth is another one of those things that says, how I am right now is not perfect, and so tomorrow I should be better, or else I'm not growing. So that's exactly what I wanted to say, is that when you're living in the present moment, there can never be a thing such as growth.
And you're perfect right now.
Yeah. How you are right now is exactly what's here. As we were saying earlier, where is this magical should? I should weigh such and such, or I should meditate so many hours, or I should, do whatever that you think you should do. Where is this magical should? You know what I mean? Like,
the whole idea behind mindfulness is not to deny the fact that there's a past and a future, but to simply understand that all that exists right now is now. So growing can happen in the present moment. It doesn't mean that you're looking for it in the future.
But I think the issue comes into place where whenever you recognize growth happens, you aren't really... Are you in the present moment when you recognize that? When you actually think of the concept of growth? Are you really there?
No, because you're the future. Like,
okay, yeah,
I need to grow, so I'm not perfect where I am now.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I've been there, too. Sometimes I still am.
Oh, yeah. I think that, again, who is the one that's growing? Growth implies a self. It implies an I. And, in true non-dualism, there is absolutely no I whatsoever. It's not that there's an I here now, but after enlightenment there won't be an I. It's that there never was an I. There never was a self that could that could grow. So it's like asking, how do I want to? I don't want to say this without getting the wrong idea across. We were talking about animals earlier. It's like asking a dog to grow. Okay, well you're perfect in your dog nature right now, but I want you to grow into something else.
No, I think progression is a better word, because in the same way that music can progress and music can move forward, life is the same thing. It doesn't necessarily mean growth. Music is a good example of that, in my opinion. Like,
I think life
progression,
moves, but progression or regression is a dualistic term that says I'm either going up or down. Who can judge that? That brings in morality. That brings in right and wrong. So
progression is just movement.
But I also feel like it's bringing in who is this person who's progressing?
Exactly.
Who is the person that's regressing? There isn't anything. No, that person doesn't exist to progress.
It's a very linear thought. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree for sure.
It's like when people ask, like a master who might get angry, and people say, well, how can a master get angry? There is no such thing as the master as an individual person. They are literally just an apparent incarnation of truth, just as everyone is, but they just know it. So anger can appear. It doesn't mean anything's wrong. Sadness can appear. It doesn't mean anything's wrong. You know what I mean? Just these thoughts come up and then they go. The issue is when we believe that these thoughts mean something about me, which there really is no me, but that these thoughts mean something about some I. And that's where the real suffering enters in. And then we get the ideas of growth and whatever else.
And that also goes, what you're just saying about, for example, a master getting angry, that also goes on people thinking that, being happy, first of all, the idea of that angry and happiness are separate, and also the fact that being angry or being sad is worse than being happy or being okay or whatever. There is nothing like that, and that's why when a lot of people make comments a lot of times about these Zen masters who hit people, they yell at people, etc., and they see it as this horrible, horrible thing, when it's, no, this is a way of truth expressing itself and trying to awaken itself in others.
That's a really good point. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, because that's, again, going back on to labels, conception, preception, perception. That everybody going about saying, this is the idea that I have of a Zen master. A Zen master is completely calm, serene all the time, and he isn't subject to all of these emotions that everyone else does. Sorry, you're born a human being. We have everything similar to one another. There's no difference.
I didn't know Zen masters hit people.
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Oh, my goodness.
There's so many Collins and shit about that. As far as the language, but there's so many.
No, I don't care.
Beat them with a stick. It's enlightenment.
Yeah. It reminds me of this next part. It sounds, I want to, dualistically, from the perspective of, humanity, it sounds very, very apathetic, but let me read this part. Other people are excited as though they are at a parade. I alone don't care. I alone am an expression, like an infant before it can smile. It sounds so apathetic, but it's true peace, because, when someone, it's fine to be excited, but people are excited about things. And when you have true detachment from everything, then you simply flow.
Something is really staticky.
Yeah, I hear that too.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. That's what I said earlier.
With the new caller, her microphone is picking up all sorts of static.
Is that you, Elisa? Mute your mic and then unmute it.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's okay. I can still hear everyone.
Is it really bad?
Try adjusting it.
Adjusting what? Because I have my headphones and I could try and take them out.
Oh, no, you're fine. It doesn't matter.
I thought it was Kramer because, or whoever it was, that had the windstorm.
Yeah, that was Kramer before, though.
This is the windstorm.
Kramer is the windstorm. Don't worry about it, Alicia, it's fine.
Okay.
So, and then the next part it says, other people have what they need. I alone possess nothing. I alone drift about, like someone without a home. I am like an idiot. My mind is so empty.
Great line.
So, so it sounds very almost depressing, but it's really not. It's only that way if you think about it with the mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But true detachment is really absolute stillness, absolute peace, no matter what's going on around you. You know, so it's not being pulled about this way and that. And it kind of, I think it kind of exemplifies the point about growth and responsibility because when you're completely detached, you are what you are all the time. And that's just what it is, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and looking at the, sorry, I lost my place. Oh, looking at the line, I'm like an idiot. My mind is so empty.
Yeah.
I mean, we could pick that one apart like crazy, but some of the things that just come up when I read this is that, first of all, what is an idiot? Because that's almost always put into some conceptual term of being idiot, being intelligent, or put it into some society term that you're an idiot because, for example, here, you're an idiot because you don't think of all these thoughts like I do. You don't constantly ponder these things, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's where he's going, where my mind is so empty. In a way.
Go ahead, finish.
And then I don't know. It's just like.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Taking as what society or what someone who still holds on to these concepts would look at this person and say, and call them an idiot. You know, you're living in some mountain hermitage, and you know, I don't know. I'm just going off on a tangent here.
I honestly, I really relate to that line especially because there has been only 2 situations, but they have meant profound amounts to me, where I have what people labeled as ego death. I've experienced this twice. Literally.
Yeah, I can completely understand that.
Yeah, that no-mindness, I remember the very first time I experienced it, I literally could not even fathom just by how crazy I felt at not having any form of thought and just being sensory perception whatsoever.
Yeah, mine has actually progressed in a way, and it's the weirdest feeling ever, because mine has, like, not gone away, and it's just, like, I want to be there. I don't want to give it up, but at the same time, it's like it's naturally happening, and it progresses, and it's like, you really understand that, and then you hear other people talking about this idea, and you're looking at it from this perspective, but if you really understood it, you wouldn't even be talking about it like that.
Yeah.
That makes me respect silence a lot more anymore, simply because, I mean, silence is understanding, and
I think the more you talk about these ideas, the more that you forget that there's a direct experience of them.
Yeah. And I think that, what I want to say, the silence thing, that's my main focus, but silence can be had even when mind is active. Silence can be had even when you're in the middle of life, in the middle of the world. If you're deep enough, you can still experience the silence that kind of engulfs all perception, all thoughts. It's the field that everything rises within. So silence doesn't need an absolute cessation of thought. It can be a nice experience, but it doesn't require an absolute cessation of thought. Silence is really always here.
Yeah.
It's just waiting to be perceived. You know what I mean? So it's, all the experiences are very nice, but the true, I don't want to say test, but once silence starts to come into everyday life, just like I said about meditation earlier, once silence starts to enter in and you see the stillness everywhere, even stillness in movement, which is very paradoxical, but it's what you see. Even stillness in movement, even silence in sound.
Yeah.
It's prior to everything. It encompasses everything. So that's how it is. That's how it's been for me. one thing I missed this line, the first one, I think encompasses this whole chapter so well. Stop thinking and end all your problems. I think that's just awesome. I think it's perfect. Not to say that you can stop thinking, just as I said, you can't, thoughts aren't yours. You know what I mean? But I think a better way to put that is stop identifying with thoughts.
Yeah.
Stop believing your thoughts and end
I
all your
feel like-
problems.
I feel like that's where a lot of when you bring translations of
Yeah.
texts from way back here or from way back when, and you bring them into the modern day world, and not only that, but you also bring it to the West, and they're mostly in Eastern sense, and you have these things like stop thinking. People, their first thing is to try very, very hard to completely stop their thoughts, which from personal experience is not possible.
Nope.
And I think
You think more.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I think what they mean more with that is that what you're saying, don't identify with them or don't hold on to them as much. You know, they're going to come and go. Let them come and go. You don't have to be involved with them.
I also see the Eastern view as when they say stop thinking, it's really to rest and not engage.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's that's been the greatest insight for me, I think, is just that we don't have to believe our thoughts. You know, it doesn't mean anything about me if a thought comes up that is quote-unquote negative. You know, that judges, even a judging thought doesn't mean anything about, it doesn't mean that I'm judging. That's the whole root of it, is that people think they have a judging thought and so they are the one judging. You know, and so this I thought is the whole root of this house of cards, so to speak, that you think that, okay, well, I'm having this thought, so it's not my thought. You know, can you really ever control your thoughts? Like I said about the person the other day who said, you know, the greatest control you can have is over your thoughts. And that's not true at all. It's totally not true. You know, you don't have any control, and in that is freedom. It makes me think of, you know, all these people talking about the law of attraction and things like that. Control your life and get the things you want, and to me, it's anti-spirituality. You know what I mean? It's anti-spirituality, anti-enlightenment. Not to say it's wrong if people want to do that, but go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. Speaking of thoughts, I was just thinking, where the hell do these thoughts arise from? What's the source?
That question
Nothing?
right there has been one of the most liberating things I've ever asked myself. Where does this thought come from? I'm not even going to try to even put this into words whatsoever, but that is a beautiful
It's
thought.
ineffable. Absolutely. It definitely is ineffable.
Yeah. That's the great thing. I mean, I've heard, like, I know Adi Ashanti said something like this, that the absolute state of enlightenment just cannot be spoken. You know, you can say all sorts of things about it, but it's really a disservice. It's such a disservice.
Yeah.
You know, it's a complete disservice because it's nothing like you can ever imagine because it's just beyond mind. You know, it's like a human trying to imagine what a fish might be like, being a fish in water. You know what I mean? Like, it's just totally alien to your experience.
Well, I know one of the analogies that Alan Watts used, I'm pretty sure it was talking about this, was it's like, it's as undescribable as your eyes seeing the back of your head. Like, try to see the back of your head. It's not light or dark, it's nothing.
Yeah.
You can't conceive it. Or trying to think of a brand new color, which is always a fun thought experiment.
Sure.
It's red. The back of your head is red.
Well, how do we know you and I see the same red?
Yeah, I remember being the age of, I think I was 9 or 10 when that first thought came into my brain. And I started, like, even just realizing, holy crap, I'm like Socrates. I know nothing.
And wanted to add back onto the where do our thoughts originate from, is that I get a lot of people often think that it originates in our brain, but actually what I think is that it comes from outside our bodies, and all our brain does is just processes that thought and tries to adapt them to our ability to understand and function.
I agree. I think it's formless information.
Yeah, I had I posted something like this the other day, that it's not that consciousness is inside the body; it's that the body is inside of consciousness. You know, so people say, consciousness arises from the brain or whatever, but I think the brain arises from consciousness. That's how I think it is. Obviously, it's not something that could ever be scientifically proven, but it's how I think it is.
Yeah.
And if I should say the brain processes it, because it's more the mind, because since the brain and the mind are two different things.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I think something he ended up saying, and I agree with this wholeheartedly, that really all the brain is, it's basically just susceptible to radio waves. If we pick up frequencies,
Sure.
simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's how binaural beats work, if I'm not mistaken, if you guys have ever heard of those.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And it attunes your brain waves, if I remember correctly, to whatever frequency that binaural beat is playing. And that just shows right there how something that's, I'm going to say, seemingly outside can really, really have an effect.
Mm-hmm.
That's so interesting. A lot. I follow this guy on Twitter who talks a lot about science, but in terms of consciousness, and even a lot of scientists, especially in the field of quantum mechanics, are saying, everything.
Do you mean quantum physics?
Quantum mechanics, same thing.
It's a part of it, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That everything is arising from a field of consciousness. That matter as such doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's actually funny that I'm gonna bring in my this AP work that I'm doing, because it has to do with so maybe it did do me a little bit of good. but yeah, the one of the studies was whether or not behavioral patterns and depth perception is something that's learned, or whether it's something that's innate and when we're born. This kind of goes to the idea of if ego is something that's there, or if ego is something that originates over time.
sure.
But they did the study and they realized that 40% of behavior and 50% of intelligence is all genetic.
Oh yeah,
So
sure.
I like how it goes to the idea of back to determinism and free will and whatnot. And free will kind of correlates to the idea of consciousness too. If there really is a free will or not.
Free will is such a funny subject.
Oh, it is. I know we were discussing this in Skype the other day, but there is no reason to think that there's free will. And plus, as we were saying, as with responsibility, free will would have to imply a person to wield it. You know what I mean? To choose. But even, again, we kind of backed up with science, which it doesn't need to be, but just kind of interesting thought. They did a lot of studies where they would ask a person to choose between two different buttons and to press that button. But the person, when they thought they were deciding, the scientists could already predict it up to 10 seconds before they actually thought they chose.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, this is also interesting too, because you say there's no person, but there's also one of the studies in there that was saying that hypnosis is hypnosis of voluntary or involuntary action, and if action is voluntary, then there has to be something there. It's something concrete that's creating these actions and creating these thoughts.
Really. Not necessarily. I don't think so at all.
Well, yeah, you can't say that there's something non-existent is giving birth to something existent.
Define voluntary, though. How do they know what is voluntary? How can you...
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. How can you know what's voluntary or not? You know what I mean? How can you... If everything is a chain of cause and effect going back indefinitely, where does freedom enter in.
And even in that, I mean, this is just a very small part because I feel that the cause and effect part is the real meat of it.
Oh, yeah.
The vegan says that, but but oh great, now I lost my thought. Oh no, but let's say just for the hell of it, there is a person, there is a free will. Okay, and I'm exercising the free will to talk to you right now. Who taught me how to talk? Who designed this language? Who designed the iPad that I'm talking to you on, et cetera, et cetera.
What
It
is
goes
there
back
to
and
do?
links almost infinitely with other people, other things, other events, all this stuff that, it seemingly is all separate, but it really comes down to one thing.
And so let's take it on a purely material level. Let's even just strip spirituality from it. That doesn't matter with this kind of thing. Everything, if they can truly determine your decisions seconds before you think you made it. So when a decision arises, where did it come from? Did you choose to think a thought?
Well, decision is based off of memory.
But where does it all come
memory,
from?
Well, I was actually listening to something today about memory actually being something concrete and tangible in the brain. Memory, when you form a memory, proteins come together and basically form that connection in your brain. So, when you decide to make that, whatever decision you decide to make, it kind of goes back to that idea. But if you're simply arguing the idea behind all of this, and you can simply you can say that about anything really. I think that's the whole speculative side of this, is that you can argue that question. You can argue that question about literally anything.
As far as what we were talking about, cause and effect, a memory. You were talking about a memory. For that to arise, it's not like all memories are instantaneously available. For a memory to arise is a spontaneous random event.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or some kind of external stimuli, though.
Yeah,
Couldn't you argue that?
Yes. So there's not something here saying, okay, well, I'm going to think of something, and I'm going to make a decision. Even that thought, let's say I get up to go get water. It happens because I notice I'm thirsty, and the thought comes up, oh, I'm going to go get water. You know what I mean? Like, where's the freedom in that? The thought came up, an action arose.
No freedom in it.
Exactly.
No,
so that's,
pretty well.
Even on a material level, like I said in the Skype chat, this is something that is easily evident when you really see who you truly are. But then it's interesting to take that and kind of retroactively find the evidence for it. It's not necessary, you know what I mean, but it's very interesting. It's obvious there's no free will, because there's no self.
Yeah, going back to the whole... No, you finish what you were saying, Brent. Go ahead.
No, okay. Just don't forget your thought. But even, like I said, on a philosophical level, on a scientific level, on a material level, even if you entered soul into it, there's really no place where freedom could enter in, because it's just all cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. So go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's funny. Okay. When we're thinking about free will and the fact that really it's just a facade, and we were mentioning quantum physics and mechanics earlier, if we take string theory into account for, let's go with the fifth dimensional. I don't know how well you guys are versed in all this, but it's basically taking the fact that, actually it'd be higher than fifth dimensional, it would be sixth, encompassing all possible futures of yourself.
Sure.
Basically knowing everything that could happen or would happen has happened in one previous timeline, in one version of reality. The idea that if that wasn't there, I can totally see the idea of free will. But the idea is, if it already has happened and reality is as it is, the thought came in any form or shape, and the freedom of choice is completely gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It spontaneously arises. There's no... it doesn't... I think the only reason I think people believe in it is because it's quite frightening to not believe in it. I think that's the only reason, is because there's this illusion of freedom that we have. I could have chosen otherwise. But that's just
Especially in
retroactive.
the
How do you know
West.
that?
Oh yeah, especially in the West. But that also, that just even knowing that, the fact that everything has happened that could have or would have, the only thing that I really even ask myself is, okay, if that's the case, why am I experiencing this one? Why this one?
Well, that goes to the multiverse theory, too.
Yeah.
That's where string theory really stems from.
It's like, why, I mean, in a different, if in the multiverse is very, very, very plausible, and let's just say that, it is completely real. In a different universe, the only difference right now could be that, instead of talking on my iPad, I'm talking on my computer, or it could be as extreme as, I don't know, the Japanese were successful during World War II, and the U.S. is now a part of Japan. And even crazier stuff than that, and it's all these different levels of it, and even within that, there is still no free will.
No.
So, I mean, again, I agree with you wholeheartedly, and that's why I, to this day, really my true real seeking type of behavior goes to, why is this the reality? Why isn't the other realities the one that I'm experiencing? Why is my consciousness and my sense of awareness stuck in this one?
And then there really is no why. I mean, everything is what it is. Like, there's no overarching reason of why things happen the way they do. You know what I mean? Everything just happens. Everything just flows a certain way. So I think that going back to just living in the present moment, these questions really don't matter if you just live in the present moment. You know what I mean? You don't need free will. You don't need morality, as we were talking about earlier. You just live. That's just how it is. But going back, I like to talk a lot about religion because so many people are stuck in religion of some kind, or even a rigid spiritual path of some kind. When you take out free will, which is very easy to do, when you take out objective morality, which is pretty easy to do as well, there is really no foundation for religion to sit upon, or any kind of rigid path, that requires certain things, or that has judgments about right or wrong, or what will happen if you do certain things. There's no foundation for it. And it can be a scary thought for someone who's still there. I know most of us are not, but it's just totally the truth. These are the pillars of religion, and when they're taken out, what happens?
It's very true. I think
go ahead.
It's like you were saying, it's a complete fear thing, and the whole idea of, you're saying that, well, when you take those two things out now, religion really has no basis. That's scary, but even those other two things can scare the crap out of people as well.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
And I know we were talking about it before, but especially the free will thing, because people hold on to that, and they're so attached to having that concept of, I'm doing this. If I don't want to do this, I don't have to do this. I can choose, all this different stuff. And people get so afraid.
Yeah, and then that gets rid of the whole idea of, again, morality has a weak foundation on its own, but with no free will, there can be no morality. Morality requires someone to choose. You know what I mean? If there was a world of, let's say, robots, or just, let's say there's a world of robots who made certain decisions, and one robot killed another, who's going to say that was wrong? You know what I mean? Who's going to say that they're to blame if that was just in their programming?
I mean, that's the thing. It would go back to programming, which is essentially the same issue that we have with the ego. It's programming.
It is programming. It's conditioning. True. And so again, with enlightenment, it's kind of a deconditioning of mind, whereas everything becomes very spontaneous.
And it's beautiful all over again.
Yeah, so the programming is kind of reversed, so to speak, at least most of it, and everything arises very spontaneously. You have no beliefs about what should happen or what shouldn't happen or anything like that. But free will, you can't blame anyone when there's no free will. How can you blame someone for doing something? Even yourself.
I literally wrote something like that a really long time ago, that enlightenment is completely illusory. It doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm. Who did you say said that?
What?
No, I couldn't hear
That
you
was
that well.
Liam.
What you were saying. Oh. Okay. But yeah, I think, when you look at these ideas, it really takes out any kind of idea of self-judgment, of judgment of others, of condemnation, or anything. It takes out the whole foundation of it. It really does. But it's freeing. If you really think about it, it's freeing.
Oh, very.
It's very freeing.
Yeah, the responsibility goes away.
Oh, goodness, yes. There's no foundation for it. And so whatever you do, you do.
And I think a lot of, I was talking way before about the whole self-guilt thing.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, my preferred practice is Zazen, and I used to have it where, if I missed the time or if I chose to do something else, I would just have this horrible sense of guilt.
Yeah.
And now it's very free, and it's like if I sit, I sit, and if I do sit, then fine.
Yeah. And even then, you couldn't have chosen not to sit,
Yeah.
and you couldn't have chosen not to feel guilt.
Yeah.
And that's, it's like, oh, I can't choose whether I sit or not, but I can choose whether I feel guilt. That's not even true. It goes all the way back. And so this is where enlightenment comes in. True peace is simply letting the mind be what it is, like it said in this chapter. Let the mind be what it is, but don't bother with it.
Yeah.
It's like a radio playing in the background. You don't identify with it. You don't think it means something about you. You can have, some of the worst thoughts a person could have, but it doesn't mean anything about you. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to act on it. So that's why the whole thing is a game, because you really, even to teach someone, even for someone to practice or not practice, or for someone to reach enlightenment, whatever that's supposed to mean, is all, I don't want to say by chance, but there's no choosing in it. You know what I mean? Like you were such a good seeker that you got enlightenment early.
And there's no chooser to choose.
No. I mean, it's just a game. Like,
Yeah.
You can't look at someone and say, oh, they're not enlightened. You can maybe say that expression, there's belief there that there's an I, but even that itself is perfect. That's not non-enlightenment.
Isn't everybody, enlightened? Like,
In
in a way.
In reality, yes. I mean, not if
It
you
also
take
depends
it as,
how you define it.
Yeah,
exactly.
because
If
honestly,
you think,
everyone is and no one is.
exactly. There's no someone that's enlightened. No one has ever become enlightened.
Yeah,
You know what I
and
mean?
you can't show me what enlightenment is either, because it's not there.
Yeah, definitely. So it's something that really can't be. I mean, it can be pointed to, but it can't really be taught. I mean, people try all the time, but you know.
It's one, and we were talking before. I really, like I was saying multiple times, there's freaking words, but it's like trying to describe that, this, it, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
is folly. I mean, you can try, you can give it names, you can give it labels, you can try your best to describe it, but ultimately, you will fail at describing it accurately, or you will fail at really communicating it. And the only way that that's really useful is, in these settings, even in this setting right here, like a satsang, where we're talking about it. And even that, you can't fully communicate it.
Mm-mm. You either have it or you don't, but you always do, so there's no not having it, it's just you're not aware of it.
Yeah.
So, as kind of a final thought, what happens, how freeing is it when you truly realize, okay, there's never a chance I can become awakened. Because I already, there's already awakening here. There's already freedom right here within reach. You know what I mean? How freeing is that when seeking itself falls away because there's nothing to do? In a sense, you could say spirituality is the biggest waste of time because everyone's trying to reach something that's unreachable because they already have it, because they are it.
And that's where I'm not even going to remember the quote exactly, but actually it was something along the lines of, what is the Tao? And I don't remember what he responded, but the second point is how do I come in accord with the Tao? And the master replied, trying to come in accord with it, you'll deviate from it.
Yeah.
And that goes exactly with what you were saying.
Yeah. You can't, and even that is false because you can never deviate from it.
Yeah.
Because it is you and you are it. You can't not do what's supposed to be done. It's so perfect. It really just collapses the whole ego concept. Like ego is flailing around saying, well, I need to do something. You know what I mean? It's how I used to experience it, is when I first started to realize there was nothing to do, it's like this resistance, like you feel like you're falling through space. Well, something needs to get done, but there's nothing.
Yeah.
So any final thoughts? We're about wrapping up to we have about 3 minutes left.
Drinking from the great mother's breasts. That's my final thought.
Yes.
I've been waiting to say that.
I think.
I don't even know.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I don't even know about that great mother to breast thing. Like I've read that so many times trying to find a context, and I'm like, you want to talk about freedom of randomness? Holy crap!
I think it's
Like
a
Earth?
metaphor of the Tao that we're connected in.
Oh, the source.
Yeah, so we're nourished by being one with the Tao. I think that's what it means.
I like great mother's breasts better.
Me
10
too.
times cooler.
Funny. No, never mind.
I wanted to say something back to the we are already enlightened topic, is that I was reading something before, and it's kind of a cool comparison that I like to look back on whenever, and it's like if you consider a room which is already really big and spacious, and however you organize the furniture in the room, it will not affect its spaciousness already. And you can put up walls to divide the room, but obviously they are temporary.
Yeah.
And whether you choose to leave the room cluttered or messy, it won't affect its actual spaciousness. And
Yeah.
I think like the mind is also intrinsically like spacious. And although you can get caught in all these desires and attachments, and the true nature is not affected by it,
Sure.
that we are
Definitely.
already inherently free.
Yeah, that's very true. Can I ask how you found us? I'm just curious.
Oh, it was posted on Alex's blog.
So is that
good.
mine?
Hey, thanks, Alex.
I don't even remember reblocking anything like this, but alright. I'll go with it.
A while ago.
Well, I'm glad you joined us. We have this every Saturday, so join us anytime, really.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm actually leaving in for a month, so when I get back, I will.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. This has been wonderful. This has been great. I love this discussion.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
So, all
Hey,
right,
what
well,
happened to the Ventrilo service, by the way, real fast?
I like this a lot better because we can reach out to a lot more people.
Excellent.
So I just think it's a lot easier because the software, it was an obstacle for people to try to install it and get the server working, and you know what I mean? Like, people were just really confused. So it's just easier. You can just call in and press 1 and you're in.
And a dial pad. Reminder, 1 on dial pad.
Dial pad,
Yeah.
yes. And plus,
And
we're
it
on
works
Blog Talk
on-
Radio, so people can find us and listen, and we can reach more people this way.
You know how many people we had tonight in like total?
We had 5 people here. I don't know how many people listened.
Oh, that's still pretty good.
Yeah? That's
It
really
was
good.
fun.
Yeah.
You're not about to fall asleep.
Don't fall asleep. So, well, thank you, everyone. Really, this has been wonderful. This is a great discussion.
It definitely was.
It's so cool to connect with different people about these topics.
Oh, I mean, it's not the same, it's not the same when you just do it through text. It's great to discuss it. I love the idea of satsang. I really love it because it's in the company of truth. I mean, it's to discuss this verbally, in a group of people and bounce ideas like that. It's just great. I really like it. So I also feel like Ventrilo was a little stilted because, like, you couldn't respond until someone was done with their point. You know what I mean? So it just felt very one-sided sometimes.
Yeah.
So, what's that?
I agreed with you.
Yeah. So I like this a lot better. So, well,
Yeah.
thank you, everyone.
Yep.
Thank you.
We'll be back here next Saturday. Same time, I think.
Enjoy your evening, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Bye.
Yeah.
Peace.